we've talked quite a bit about the First Amendment, that there are 9 others, and I understand that a lot of them are kind of, they seem a bit distant to you and to your life, but I assure you they're really not. I look, how many people watch a lot of television? And do you occasionally watch those cop shows where they go through the courtroom dramas where they start with the arrest and they track a person all the way through their trial? And those are popular shows. Yeah, okay, like that. A lot of what they do is outlined in, now obviously we're talking about fictional characters doing fictional things, even the ones ripped from the headlines, so to speak, are still fictional characters doing fictional things. But when someone on one of these shows says, I take the fifth, any idea what they're saying?
The plead the fifth means you just shut up when they ask you questions.
Right. Why would you do that?
Because if you say something, then they could hold it against you.
Right, and you don't have to do that to yourself. And that's what the Fifth Amendment says here. So that's why you're taking the Fifth Amendment is, I don't want to answer this question because I might incriminate myself. But that is a might. That's the reason that they can't hold that against you either. Because many of us might think if someone declines to answer a question that they're doing it for a reason. But you can't use someone's absence of an answer against them either. Yes?
Every time I watch those cop shows, when people refuse to answer, cops threaten them to give them more time. Is that legal?
No, it's not. And actually, occasionally on those shows, they will talk about that. They'll pull one of the cops aside and say, "You're pushing your limits. You're pushing the border." Because there are ways that you can ask someone the same question again, hoping they'll answer your question and try and get them to prod. But you can't threaten a guy. You can't push limits and try and get them to do that, because then they're going to. It's kind of a cross between the Fifth and the Fourth Amendment, because although they're not taking anything from you, they're forcing you to do something that also goes under coercion and torture. Here, they really can't. They can't slam your head into the desk like they do occasionally on those shows. You're not allowed to do that, and that's why on those shows usually they'll have someone pull that cop aside and yell at them about how they're breaking code. We have, well, the 9th and the 10th Amendment. I actually heard someone right before class saying that they looked a lot alike. And they do look a lot alike, but there is a big difference between the 9th and the 10th Amendment. The 9th Amendment says, it's pretty simply, if something's not in the Constitution, it doesn't mean that it's illegal for you to do. That's not what the 10th Amendment says, and what it does say is that states are able to make laws independent of the federal law. If your state wants to enact something that, for example, can anyone think of any laws in certain states that are not federal law, sorry, I can't word that quite right. Any laws that certain states have that aren't nationwide laws?
Making pot legal.
Right, there are states that actually talk about doing that. California is one of them, and there are various degrees of that. A few years ago, I don't know if anyone heard the debate on question 2 here in Massachusetts, which was very similar for decriminalization of marijuana. It changed the laws by which Massachusetts police can prosecute people for possessing marijuana. It did not change the federal law against possessing marijuana. Just the local interpretation, just the local laws, statewide. Yes?
I have to wait till I'm 16 and a half to get my license, but my cousin who lives in New Hampshire can get it at like 16.
Excellent. That is a fantastic point. States do have different driving ages. It's all over the board. If you really looked out there are some places that it's close to 17. There are some places where it's further back. It's earlier in life. And there are various reasons for that, but the one reason is there's not a federal law saying how old you have to be to drive, so that means every state is allowed to determine that for themselves. And they do tend to run tests, and occasionally it will come up for a debate. They'll either want to peel it back or make it older. Yes?
I have a question about gay marriage.
Okay.
If you could get married in Massachusetts, states recognize that, even though it's not legal in those other states?
Legally, legally they do have to. And that's one of the state's rights. Massachusetts not only has the right to make that law, it's a law. Now that doesn't mean that other states have to marry people. You can get married in Massachusetts, though, in that context, and if that couple were to move out of Massachusetts, their marriage would be legally recognized. And that's a federal law protecting the state of Massachusetts' right to make their own laws, because otherwise that wouldn't really be much of a marriage if it doesn't exist anywhere but Massachusetts. Okay, I think we've gotten a good grasp of that. One last question, though: is there any amendment in here that you might still be confused about? Any that doesn't really make that much sense to you? Because I understand that some of them are a little vague. Is there any that maybe still seems a bit confusing?
Like 5 and 6 are like the same thing, right?
Well, no. 6 and 5 go together, but they're not the same thing, because the Sixth Amendment actually is talking about your right to having a trial and how that trial is to be conducted, and the Fifth Amendment is as to your rights in a trial, whether you can be forced to incriminate yourself or not. The Sixth Amendment is, all right, it talks about a jury of your peers, and just a quick example: what if there weren't a jury of your peers? Who else would try your case? If there weren't a jury, what would happen when someone goes to trial?
They'd have a judge.
They'd just have one judge who might not be anything like them, might not have any idea what their life is like, or any idea of what this situation is like. And that person's going to have to weigh the facts of that case and make a decision about that person's freedom or that person's wallet or whatever it is. They have to make a decision that will impact that person. So we have a jury of 12 of your peers instead who can hear the facts of the case, and they, being people more like you, people from your community, they give you a better chance of being heard by someone who understands your situation. And that's what the Sixth Amendment's really doing. And any others? We're good? This is, just quickly, these are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and they are yours as citizens. These aren't going to come up for review anytime soon, and that's why the people that wrote the Constitution built this in, is that these are some very important protections for your everyday life.